Hello and welcome to another episode of the Uncommon Energy podcast. On this week's episode, we're talking all about Orlando Regionals, which is coming up this weekend, and that's really going to be our main point of discussion today. We'll talk about a little bit of tournament prep and how things may go at this massive tournament. We'll, of course, have Guess That Flavor Text, and then we'll wrap it up with the meta predictions, meta breakdown. We'll talk about what decks we think are going to do well, what techs we think certain decks should be including for the weekend, what cards will help improve your matchups, and overall how we think you may be able to find success at Orlando this weekend. My name is Chip Ritchie, and I'm joined here as always by my friend and co-host Azul GG. What's up, Azul? How we doing, man?
Doing pretty good, Chip. Kind of had an up and down week. Still feeling a little bit sick or under the weather. I don't really know. So didn't get as much streaming done as I would have liked, but hopefully going to be feeling good going into Orlando this weekend. And then I also kind of hurt my shoulder in the gym. So
Ooh,
it's not bad, nothing bad. I just like pulled something or strained something a little bit too much. So
getting too
probably not
big,
going to be
man.
hitting.
Getting too big.
prob- Probably not going to be hitting the gym this week. I guess I'll still do. I guess I'll do legs. No upper body stuff, maybe. But besides that, my week's been pretty pretty chill. But getting ready for not just Orlando regionals, but kind of the a slew of traveling heading up coming up here soon for me because yeah, right after Orlando we got OCIC, and right when I get back from OCIC, it's Knoxville, and I'm actually going to Knoxville early, so I'm going to OCIC a little bit early as well to deal with hopefully deal with some of that jet lag. So yeah, just kind of mentally preparing for the slew of travel coming up here.
Yeah, had a pretty good week myself. Really nothing like crazy going on, just normal life things, I guess. I did get to go play in a locals this past weekend. I didn't do the best, but they had Crown Zenith legal for the tournament, so I got to mess around with some of those new cards. Um, Played with the Zamazinta and Sky Seal Stone in a Lost Box deck. Like I said, I didn't do the best. I ended up going 2-1-2, which is like honestly kind of cringe, but my two ties. Let's see, one tie was I just messed up a game 2 against a Mew, and then we went to game 3 and didn't have enough time to finish, so it was just a legitimate
Mhm.
tie. Game 3 we were playing, and it was like a situation where like I could win if I took 2 VMAX knockouts back to back, which I could theoretically have done with my deck. And so my opponent just psychic leaped his only Mew VMAX out of play to like not even give me the the chance to do it. I was like, okay, so we're tying. He's like, yeah, we're tying. And then the other tie just had like a dead draw game, I think, and then like that I should have scooped earlier than I did. One of those type of things. You know, it's always hard to know when to scoop. And then I was going to tie another game. These lost box decks just take forever. I was going to tie another game, the loss, and I ended up just giving the win to my opponent because I was 0-1. They were 1-0, and they're a friend, and they a loss for me at that record is the same as a tie, or a tie is the same as a loss, really, for both of us, I guess. So I just gave them the win in that one. But yeah, I had fun at least. I don't get to play as much Pokemon these days as some of you guys, so I enjoyed getting to go out and play. Shoutouts to my wife for taking care of the baby for a day so I could go do that. And yeah, looking forward to seeing what's going to go down in Orlando this weekend. And like I said, that's going to be the bulk of what we're talking about this week, because this is looking Azul Orlando like it's going to be the largest regionals of all time. We did talk about this a little bit last week, but definitely still worth mentioning again, which is awesome to see for the growth of the game.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so it's gonna be the largest. I think that we hit the cap this week. They might open up some more slots for people who have,
I did see them say that.
yeah, canceled, looking to get refunds. They got to work all that out. So I think if you haven't been able to register yet, there will be some more slots opening up. It sounds like. So be on the lookout for that. What is it? What is it? Go follow RK9 on Twitter, and also I forget
Overload
the who
events.
Overload Events. Yeah, go follow those two over on Twitter, RK9 and Overload Events, to make sure if you're trying to get in, figure out when those things are becoming available again, if there is anything becoming available again. But there might be some more, it sounds like. But yeah, largest regional almost ever for sure is about to happen again. And then it's competing now with numbers that we get at NAIC, right? NAIC, largest regional or largest tournament generally outside of Japan, of course.
I
Or
mean, it's
Japan gets
already
like,
going to be bigger than this past year's NAIC,
yeah,
which was
yeah,
like
yeah.
1,200 players or something like that.
Dude, did this NAIC cap super hard or something? Because that feels like low compared. We
I
hit the
think it
cap,
did
right?
cap. Yeah, I think it did cap if I remember right. It's been a
Okay.
while though.
Yeah, because the ones before that, because the biggest NAIC we've ever had was 2018. We had 1,500, 1,534. Yeah, so being 300 players less, it must have capped, right? We must have capped.
Yeah, it was at
I don't see how we would have gotten
1155
less.
was
Yeah, I
the
don't see how
final
we would have gotten
registration
less.
number.
Yeah. So the big thing for me that I'm like this, like, uh, I'm curious about now is like how big could NAIC get this year? Of course, it does depend on where they cap it. So I think we could get to 2,000 players at NAIC. I think I mentioned that a couple episodes ago. I think we can get to 2,000 players at NAIC this year if the cap allows for it, for sure.
Yeah, hopefully so. That would be awesome. I mean, I love to see the game growing. I love to see more people getting interested in it. So it just gets me fired up. Yeah, I'm super pumped to see people wanting to come out and play Pokemon. These tournaments are so much fun. I've talked to so many people the last few weeks who are like going to their first regionals with one of these. There's just kind of in my area, I guess, as well. Because like Orlando, East Coast, some people will drive down from there. And then Knoxville Regionals is not too far, and Charlotte Regionals is in North Carolina, just a
Yeah.
couple hours away from where I am. So there's tons of people who are going to be going to their first ever regionals, and I know people I've talked to are really excited. And yeah, just it's good things to see people getting pumped about playing Pokemon.
Yeah, I feel like we're actually starting to just hit. These are like supposed to be we're just starting to hit the East Coast regionals now, right? Everything else has been more West Coast, Midwest. Like nothing has really been East Coast
Yeah,
yet,
we had
right?
Baltimore pretty much, but that's just
Oh,
about
true.
it.
We did at
Yeah,
Baltimore, and Baltimore did cap pretty fast too. So it could have been quite a bit bigger, although it was already pretty packed
yeah.
in the bunker or wherever we were.
Yeah, it was packed. I mean, in Toronto was really big for Toronto. Like it was massive
Yeah,
for a Toronto regionals, right? And because that was East Coast. So I mean, I'm sure there's probably people out there who got their passport to go to Toronto regionals this year,
yeah.
like people who didn't have it before and they're like, "You know what? We can make this drive from the East Coast." Yeah, just like a larger portion of the US population is on the East Coast. So these East Coast regionals just end up getting a lot bigger.
Yeah, do you think like just kind of do a little bit of prediction here? So this one's gonna be the biggest one. Do you think any of the other ones will pass
Let me look at the cities again.
Orlando?
Um
'Cause it won't be Vancouver.
there's
I
a
don't think
chance, I mean, I guess Charlotte could.
that would be the one, right? I think
That would
so.
probably be the one that would have to
Maybe
do it.
Connecticut. I could see Connecticut. Well,
I think Connecticut's probably a little harder to get to than Charlotte.
a little bit
Charlotte's
more
at least a little.
expensive.
I mean, Charlotte's like a decently sized airport, so it's like probably a little bit more flyable than Hartford. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna be probably one of those two. It'll be Charlotte or, I mean, I guess Knoxville. But we've already seen registration numbers go out for Knoxville, and it's sitting at like 1,200 ish for all divisions TCG right now.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's gonna do it. Yeah, probably not. I mean, I don't know. There's Florida just traditionally has always had a really large Pokemon community, so I feel like this is probably going to be the biggest one of the year. But who knows? I would love to be proven wrong there for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and hopefully it's not hopefully NAIC ends up being the biggest event of the year. We'll have to see on that as well. It's also really, yeah, it's like really cheap. Like there's a ton of players there, and it's really cheap to fly to Florida for most places, especially on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So it's pretty reasonable for everyone to get to Florida, which is nice. But yeah, super sick to see the numbers broken again, and of course with this tournament will be the first tournament with Crown Zenith League. I was like Liverpool maybe, and the reason it's so hard to like come to that thought process is because there's not that many good cards. Crown Zenith was like a pretty big set, right? It wasn't a small set. It wasn't like a Dragon's Majesty or anything. And Dragon's Majesty Dragon's Majesty had more impactful cards for like a 30 card set. So, but yeah, Crown Zenith reasonably sized set. It is kind of a filler set for us here in America. But yeah, really nothing too impactful. Now that you've played an IRL tournament with the cards legal, did you see very much change in the decks?
I mean, I think that the cards that are good, which is just a couple, will be played in some capacity. But I mean, I don't think we're going to see any Rotom V Stars out there making a deep run at the tournament. Someone might play it and might do well with it. Like I wouldn't be surprised to see a Rotom V Star in day 2, right? But I don't think we're gonna see that like win the tournament most likely. So, yeah, I mean, I think the three biggest cards from the set, I think, are definitely Radiant Eternatus, Sky Seal Stone, and then Zamazenta. And really, Sky Seal Stone and Zamazenta work in one archetype, which is Lost Box for the most part. It feels like that's really the place that you're going to be playing both of those cards. And Radiant Eternatus as well has been pretty popular alongside the Comfy Lost Zone engine. Um, so I don't know. One thing I will say is I've definitely become very disappointed in Radiant Eternatus. We've talked about that card for months now. You and I both.
Yeah.
How excited we were for the card, and it's just been a big old fat fail so far. Really, just nothing feels great with it. But it is the type of card that I wouldn't be surprised to see someone come up with something really cool and do pretty well with it.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some potential there for sure. I haven't found anything. Like I've tried out the go-to suspects, the Duraludon, of course, and I never liked the idea. I didn't even try it with Flying Pikachu because I didn't like the idea of putting Flying Pikachu in there. I was already struggling to make the deck consistent enough with just Duraludon. So, yeah, I've tried it with the Duraludon. Haven't tried it with much else besides that, but yeah, I think there is some potential there. So if someone can come up with something with like an Orbital VMAX, we got the Deoxys VMAX. There's definitely some cards that it could be good with. So I'm hoping someone's got something. I think Shadow Rider, that's one I do want to try. I think Shadow Rider might be the thing we should be looking to with that for sure. So, yeah, definitely some potential with the Radiant Tortoise. And yeah, because it's Sky Seal Stone, the Zamazenta making its way into a decent amount of Lost Box decks. The Sky Seal Stone seems to be the one that's making its way into more. Of course, it's a little bit more flexible as long as you just play that basic V Pokemon. So yeah, I think we'll see those being. I think we'll see Sky Seal Stone being a pretty probably the biggest of the three cards moving forward. I guess.
Yeah, I
Zamazenta
agree.
be
I
behind
think
it.
I think we'll see Sky Seal Stone as well in like the Vikavolt decks, right? I think that that's a
Yep.
deck that can utilize it pretty well. Since you're just going to take a one shot at some point with Raikou or the Vikavolt, doing 200 with a second attack or 190, 200 with the Zapdos on your bench, right? So yeah, I think those are the two places we could see it. I mean, anywhere else that it could fit. We were talking a little bit before. I thought like one of the parents of one of the kids I coach brought up Sky Seal Stone in Gudra for the Mew matchup. I mean, because that's been the big thing that people have disliked or not disliked, but like have talked about around Sky Seal Stone is the fact that you can just Drapion Sky Seal Stone, take 4 prizes on a Mew VMAX.
It's pretty good.
And if you knock out a Genesect first, you never get Roxanne, which is super good.
Yep. Yeah, so you dodge the Roxanne. So that's like definitely a combo. Like I think Sky Seal Stone decks that abuse that are trying to abuse a little bit more heavily than just kind of like, well, I play a Raikou in my Lost Box deck, I'll throw in a Sky Seal Stone. Ones that are built a little bit more heavily around it. Maybe Zapdos, Raikou, Drapion. What else is there? Is there any other things that seems decent? I guess those are the main ones, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're
Maybe
playing
Dragonite.
Minion in the deck as well,
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
naturally something you can slap it on.
Yeah, so then put the Sky Seal Stone in there, and then your Mew matchup it seems to get pretty good, right? Like the potential to draw 4 prize cards and play around Roxanne like that is a pretty big deal, I feel like. So that's definitely pretty cool combo to pull off with it. Alongside just being able to draw that extra prize card in like the other matchups as well. So I definitely like the idea of the Sky Seal Stone in that, and then it gives you that matchup. I think for like Gudra specifically, if you're gonna put a Sky Seal Stone in, I don't know how much it helps any other matchups. I think maybe just playing 2 Drapion is
Sure.
is just a little bit better. Of course, your odds of opening Drapion do increase by quite a bit, so that would suck. But I think that'd be a much cleaner answer for the Gudra deck to deal with, because you have to find it. I feel like that's one thing no one like thinks about. It's like, oh, they go turn 2 Lugia and then knock out my Pokemon. I go turn 2 Raikou with my Sky Seal Stone. It's like, well, you play 1 Sky Seal Stone. Like them getting turn 2 Lugia is always going to happen.
Yeah.
You getting turn 2 attack with Raikou with your 1 Sky Seal Stone is not as likely to happen. So yeah, it feels like when people like talk about matchups with Sky Seal Stone and kind of theory around it, everyone's like, oh, I always have my Sky Seal Stone. But you're not always going to have your Sky Seal Stone. Maybe if you like play a heavy Raihan count or something. Maybe, but you still need to get other stuff cooking. So
Yeah, I think it makes sense in a deck that plays Raihan, maybe like an Amazing Rayquaza deck. That's actually the deck I played at my locals. I played a Lost Box deck with 3 different basic V attackers with Sky Seal Stone. I played the 3 you mentioned, the Galarian Zapdos, the Raikou, and the Drapion, and played it alongside Rayquaza. And having Raihan, you're able to find it on those turns. if you really need it, or if you need to find it like that. I will say it did end up in my lost zone a decent amount off of flower selecting, and sometimes it was even in matchups where I thought I would really like to use this, but I can win without it, so I just have to lose this instead of ordinary rod. It's like stuff
Yeah.
like that. Um, but that's just lost box things. It makes me wonder if maybe there's room for some Intellion toolboxy type deck to come out. Right? Is the card powerful enough to make it worth playing that engine? Like, is it worth dedicating an engine to playing the card? Probably not, I guess. But something interesting to think about, maybe.
Yeah, probably not. I don't think you're gonna. I mean, it does a little bit, like that would make it like a lot cleaner, right? If you, I
Yeah,
mean, and like we've seen some decks in the past with like the Zapdos, the one of Zapdos, and getting Raikou plus Raihan isn't hard in Inteleon decks either. So maybe there is some kind of deck that kind of just plays around the prize trade super heavily, and you're always able to eventually get ahead when you go for that knockout for the 3 prize cards with the Sky Seal Stone, because it is a pretty big swing, to be honest, in most matchups and most scenarios. So it does swings the scenarios pretty heavily in your favor. So just pulling it off, I think, is the issue. And of course, like a lot of decks that have like those, especially like Lugia, I guess would be the one. Like the Lugia V, if you don't, the Lugia V star never actually has to make its way to the active, right? And even after it was in the active for a turn, it might make its way to the bench after that. So it's not only set up an attack with like a Raikou, get the Sky Seal Stone, you're supposed to boss the Lugia at that point, which should be like difficult to pull off as well. It's like another piece you need to
now we're
set up in
playing
like the whole
cross
chain of things.
switchers, right? Like,
I don't know if we're going that far, but yeah, it does definitely leads to like a whole different you like that's why I think a deck more dedicated to utilizing Sky Seal Stone could be better. Like I'm talking about like playing 2 Sky Seal Stone. Double your odds of seeing it. And play more heavily for that to be your strategy. And don't play as high of maintenance attackers like Rayquaza or Kyogre. But play like a Lost Box build that is more dedicated towards price trading and having the abusing the power of the Sky Seal Stone more aggressively. I think something like that could be pretty
sure.
cool.
Maybe something like Twin Energy Snorlax type deck.
Yeah, I don't know if I go that. The Twin Energy Snorlax stuff was never. I
No.
was never a fan of that.
There's something out there. Maybe someone can figure something out. So,
Yeah, it
yeah, one
exists.
one question I kind of had that I wanted to talk about here on the pod as well was, how do you, as one of the top players in the game and your testing group as well, comprised of many of the top players in the game, um, how do you go about coming into an event like this where there's a new set, new cards to look at, so theoretically there should be some shakeup in the meta, but at first glance and even after like a little bit further testing, it doesn't really feel like there's anything that's going to change the meta that much. We had this a little bit last year between NAIC and Worlds, right? When we got Pokemon Go and
Yeah.
it felt like, Pokestop, Lunatone, Solrock, and Radiant Charizard were really the only things that were shaking the meta up. Yeah, I don't know. Like, how do you approach these tournaments when we get these mini sets where there's only a handful of cards that impact the meta for these major tournaments?
I feel like it just makes it a little bit harder to get. There's just it's kind of like there's just going to be less unknown decks to have to worry about. Um,
Compared to like a main set release?
yeah, which means I think there's like less pressure on you to come up with something that can handle the unknown, or just having your own unknown deck. It's like Muse, like Luke, like all these top decks are still just going to be good. Like there was no major deck, or there's no. It seems like there's no major deck coming out of this set that'll make Lugia not a viable deck, or not make Mew not a viable deck, or make Lost Box not a
Right.
viable deck. Right? Like, all the top decks are still viable, and most of them didn't change at all. Right? I don't think Lugia is adding anything from from Crown Zenith. I don't think Mew's adding anything from Crown Zenith. It's like Lost Box gained some tools, and there's archetypes that can be built around Radiant Eternatus. But how good are any of these adjustments? I mean, they definitely makes the decks more powerful theoretically, right? Because if you're adding Sky Seal Stone or you're changing your build to include Zamazenta, your deck definitely had to have gotten better. Otherwise, why would you do that, right? Theoretically. But yeah, for these kind of like set releases, like sometimes I mean, that's what we kind of saw at Worlds. Really, like nothing really changed. Like there was the Radiant Charizard deck, but that was about it. Reggie's got Pokestop, right? But really nothing changed overall from um from NAIC to Worlds.
Right.
Just like kind of nothing has changed from where do we go? Crown Zenith from what's it called to Crown Zenith? What set did we just get? I don't even remember what set we just got. Oh,
Um,
Silver Tempest. Silver
yeah.
Tempest to Crown Zenith. Like nothing. It seems like nothing really changed. But I would love to be proven wrong by and I think we'll see a lot of potential to be proven wrong. Coming up this week in Orlando. I haven't found anything yet that's like super broken. But I hope someone has, because like a shakeup would be nice, because we're here for another 2 months.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this format is not changing for a while. But yeah, one other thing I wanted to talk about in regards to just like general tournament things. Like this is a discussion that came up on Twitter today. I'm gonna pull up the PokeStats tweet because that's kind of where I saw it originate. Um, is the fact that this tournament is looking so large. Yeah, here's the PokeStats tweet. I'm just gonna pull it up and read it right here. Day 2 of next weekend's Orlando Regionals can reasonably reach 200 players per Limitless TCG's match point projections. This would be the largest day 2 of any regionals in history and would be larger than day 1 of any Australian regionals, which is so wild. Like we're going to have a 200 plus person day 2 at this event, and looking at the Limitless Swiss calculator, projecting around 1,500 masters, 18-ish% tie rate. That's numbers I've heard from people, is 18 to 20% tie rate. So 18% is what I went with here. Enable intentional draws. You're expecting for 19 match points there to be 243 players in day 2 potentially of this tournament. So really what this discussion led to was people talking about, if this is the case, are you still going to ID at 18 match points, right? If you're going in to round 9 with a record of 6-2, you can take a tie, an intentional draw, and ID with your opponent so that you both are guaranteed to make day 2. The problem with doing that is it makes it much more difficult for you to make top 8.
Yeah, you would literally have to go 6-0. And even then, it would be possible you wouldn't make top 8 still. I think if you go 6-0, you'd probably be good, though. How many points would that be?
Yeah, so and the adding on to that, the limitless
You
projection
should be
for
good.
this with this tie rate is putting it at 35 match points, still being the top 8 breaking point.
Oh, okay.
But that this has it at 7.3 players making it in at 35, so even a 34 potentially making it in some scenarios. Obviously, this is just like estimations and not perfect numbers. I mean, I think it's very reasonable. Like we've had regionals this year where 35 looked like it was going to be the bubble, right? And then several
Yeah.
people tied on the winning end. So, I mean, I think it's most likely going to be 35 match points is not safe, which is a record of 11-2-2 is 35 match points. So,
You'd
if
have to
you're
go 501.
501 to maybe not make it in.
Yeah,
So,
so it didn't.
yeah.
I mean, it's come up a lot recently. I feel like the discussion of should you ID at 6-2 or not. And I guess I mean, the biggest thing, it just depends how competitive you are and what your kind of goal is. If your goal is to make day 2, well, then that would be you would achieve your goal by ID. So obviously, you should ID. I think there's a lot of players out there who, if you ask them, their goal is to improve and become better players. And I think it'll be like they will eventually have that mindset shift where it's like maybe the first time around they're content with the ID at 6-2.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe once they do that and they play through day 2 and they realize how little of a shot they had to make top 8,
I mean, going
maybe they should have
501
just
in day 2 is hard. Like that is
yeah.
tough. There are so many good players in day 2 of these regionals.
Yeah, maybe they should have just ID'd. The way I kind of looked at it is most likely. Now, if I paired up against a really good player with a close matchup, I would maybe go for the ID at 6-2. Or if I knew the matchup was unfavorable or slightly unfavorable and my opponent wanted to ID, then I would definitely be down to ID, right? But if it's a very favored matchup, I would definitely wouldn't ID. But if I was up against a really good player, the way I think about it is like so if my goal is to get top 8 or to go as far as I can, most likely the opponent I'm playing on the winning in, on average, is probably going to be worse than maybe not the first round opponent in day 2, but the second round, third round. If once I start to rack up some wins, my opponents are theoretically going to get harder and harder, right? So
Yes.
my goal
Yeah.
is to top 8 the tournament or do as well as I can. The win that's going to be the easiest is probably the person sitting across from me on the winning in at 6-2, right? So you may as well play that round out. Now, if I sit down at 6-2 and I go up against like I'm like literally just blanking on any name right now. If I sit down at 6-2 and I go up against like Isaiah Bradner or something, I'll probably ask them for the ID if I know the matchup's close, and I'll probably know what Bradner's playing at that point in the tournament, because yeah, that opponent is going to be harder probably than my round 1 opponent in day 2, even if I was at 7-2, right? So at that point, it would make sense to ID. right?
Yeah.
So that makes sense to me. But otherwise, but like I said, if your goal is just to make day two, you'll go with it. Even if you tell yourself you want to get better and you want to be competitive, I think it's still fine to take the ID at 6-2, 6-2. But I think at some point, if you don't make that mental adjustment to be like, okay, I'm at 6-2 again here, and you still have that goal of trying to strive for a top eight, get a regional win, whatever. You need to eventually have that mental shift to be like, okay, I'm playing this one out.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at these numbers here, though, and this might, I don't know. I feel like if you're wanting to win the tournament, even if it's Isaiah and it's a close matchup, you almost should play it, right? And I think knowing Isaiah, he would play it. And if he's sitting across from you, he'd tell you, no shot, Azul, we're playing it. One of us needs to get this win. Um, yeah, so like if you get the
It's
win at
possible.
18 match points, you go to 21 match points. And the limitless calc here, again, just an estimate, says that that would be 29.3 cumulative players. So you're going from being a top 30 player in day two for round one of day two, as opposed to being a top 150. Wait, how did this become 150? What happened here?
Did you mess it up?
Oh, it's because I changed it to a 2-day tournament structure. I don't know exactly what happened here, but either way, I mean
Look
the
at the
point
day
still
two. Look at the
stands.
phase two side. Maybe look at the phase two side. Would that do it for you?
No, because that's just for the second day of phase two is day two of the tournament.
Oh, okay.
It's just because, yeah, I don't know exactly what happened here. But anyway, the point still stands. It doesn't matter. Point still stands. You're going from, even in this example, you're going from being a top 30 player round one of day two to being a top 150 player of round one, day one. Like, that's a big difference just starting the day off. And you're also giving yourself some leeway. You can lose a game round one, or any of the rounds, and still you have to go 5-1 instead of having to go 5-0-1, right? And you can still go 5-0-1. So um, yeah, I don't know. I think that if you're someone who your goal, if you're a top level player and you want to win the tournament, you should play it out unless, like you said, it's an unfavored matchup. If you know that it is a matchup that you're probably not going to win just based on how your deck stacks up against theirs, then you offer the ID, right? And your opponent, of course, does not have to take the ID. They can say, "Oh no, I know what you're playing. I want to play,"
Yeah.
and they're going to try to beat you and take the win. But I will also say, like you mentioned, it's not the same for every player. And if you're someone who just wants to make it into day two, I don't think you should be ashamed at all or be, like, you shouldn't let anyone shame you into shame you about taking an ID just to make it into day two. And I think Celio's put out a pretty good tweet that kind of sums up my feelings. I kind of agree with. If you're 6-2, round 9 of a regionals, and you and your opponent would both rather ID to guarantee getting to play more Pokemon and have the day two experience, go right on ahead. It's your choice. What might be right for a top player may not be right for you. And I think that, yeah, it really just comes down to where you are as a player and what your kind of goals are.
Yeah. Like I said though, like if you're trying to make that push to become a better player and stuff, I think you do need to have that mental shift and start playing out your
Yeah.
6-2s a little bit more. And then also a lot of people the amount of people who I've seen throughout the years saying that you should play it out at 6-2 and they would always play it out at 6-2 and then get to 6-2 and then ID is pretty high.
It's so
It's like
easy to say when you're not
75%.
sitting at the table. It's so easy to
Yeah.
say when it's not your day two on the line, right?
I always call them out when I see them do it. I'm like, bro, you always said to play it out. What is this? The only people that I think I've seen stay true to it is Xander and Ian. I think are the two that I've seen always stay true. Actually, Ian might have done it for the. It's definitely Xander's definitely one of them. He's like,
Yeah.
you always play it out at 6-2. I'm sure if Xander was in like a truly terrible matchup, they would ask for the ID, and if their opponent didn't know the matchup, then might be able to get it there. But yeah. Definitely think, yeah, if you're looking for the top 8, you're looking to win the tournament, in a majority of situations, you should be looking to play out that last round. And if you lose, I mean, you don't have to sit for 6 rounds in day 2 just to end up 128. And you can go
Yeah.
do something in Orlando. There's a ton of things to do around the area. So go do something fun instead of because that feels, I mean, it feels even worse now, right? We're getting to the point where if you go like, I don't know, 2-4, you're gonna get 256 championship points.
30
For pretty
championship
much the whole
points
day.
to play 6 more rounds. Yeah.
Yeah, it does not sound like a good return on investment as far as the time goes. So Sometimes it wouldn't be. Maybe it's not that bad. You play the win in. If you get through, great. You're at 7-2, which is a huge advantage over a majority of day two. And if you lose, hey, it's not that bad. Go find something fun to do in Orlando.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what'll happen. I'm interested to see how many players will be in day two of this tournament. It's almost certainly going to be the largest day two of all time.
And probably bigger than almost all Australian regions. I love that was in that part of the tweet. That was so funny.
PokeStats with the subtle shade at the Oceania
Yeah,
region.
that wasn't very subtle. I feel like they were just like. I mean, it's one of those stats where it's like it is a stat, but like.
Why do we have to put that there?
Yeah. It is funny though.
Yeah.
It was worth it. I'm glad they put it there.
Good laughs.
No
Good
disrespect
memes,
to
good
the
memes.
Australians, obviously.
All right. Well, before we get into the meta for this event, let's take a quick little break
Respectfully.
for Guess That Flavor Text, everyone's favorite segment of the cast, where each week Azul or I will pick a card, read it off to the other host, and give them a chance to guess what Pokemon that flavor text is coming from. You do get 3 lifelines. If you are able to get it correct without using any of your lifelines, you get 4 points. I almost said match points. You get 4 points. And
That'd be insane. I'd be
for
going into
each-
Orlando stacked up.
and for each lifeline you use, you lose a chance to lose a point. So you can earn from 1 to 4 points. We are, I believe, tied. I don't actually know exactly what the number is, but I know that we're tied. And it is my turn this week to pick a card for Azul. And I know many people are playing along at home, so hope everyone's ready. Azul, though, are you ready?
Actually, one thing I want to mention here, because I'm just like looking at the
He's not ready.
tournaments that fast. Actually, I was just like, no, Europe has a decent amount of major events this year. They've had 9 total. I wonder, like in comparison to like previous years, that seems more than they've had in the past.
Azul, we're
3
not on
special
that
events,
segment right now.
6 regionals. It was just like looking at it, just
This
crossed
is
my
Guess
mind.
That Flavor Text, Azul.
All right, hit me with the flavor text, Chip. Hit me with the flavor text.
We'll talk about European regionals in 2 minutes.
All right,
all right.
Go ahead.
DNA from a space virus mutated and became a Pokemon. It appears where auroras are seen.
Appears where auroras are seen. Read it one more time.
DNA from a space virus mutated and became a Pokemon. It appears where auroras are seen.
Okay, so the only alien Pokemon, so something alien like it sounds like. Only alien Pokemon I can think of, and maybe I'm like overly thinking this, is LGM and BHM. That's where I'm at right now with that. But are they where auroras are seen? I actually have no clue. And I'm trying to think of, isn't there a Pokemon called like Aurorus? Isn't that a?
That
I don't know
is
if
a
that's.
Pokemon.
I don't think that's a fossil Pokemon though, right?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so it's
I'll,
not that.
I'll give you a hint. It's not Aurorus. I'll give you that one.
Yeah, I think I was getting there. Anyways. So those are the ones I can think of. Those are alien-like Pokemon. But I don't really have anything else to think about. So I think I'm gonna have to use some of the lifelines here. I think I'm gonna go with read an attack name.
Psychic.
Okay, Psychic. I said attack on a lot of Psychic Pokemon. LGM and Behem are both Psychic. I don't think a Behem has Psychic. But Psychic is usually what? It's usually like 10 plus 10 more. But isn't Psychic is sometimes just one basic Psychic energy for like 10 damage. All right, this isn't really going anywhere. I'm pretty sure it's a basic, so I don't want to use the stage. I could ask what set the card is from, so I think I'll go there. What set is the card from, Chip?
It is from Sun and Moon Celestial Storm.
I have no clue now. So we're gonna lock in LGM.
That is not correct, Azul. I'll give off the one more lifeline in case anyone's playing along at home. It is a basic, so you at least guessed a basic.
All right.
This was actually probably a pretty easy one for many people who are actual Pokemon fans. And it is Deoxys.
Oh my god.
Deoxys. Literally the alien Pokemon.
Yes. I didn't even think I never thought about Deoxys being an alien, to be honest. But yeah, it is, isn't it? It's kind of
Yeah.
yeah.
Any
Yeah,
Pokemon
I didn't.
fan out there who watched like the Deoxys movie is just like so mad at you right now.
I might have seen that one as well, to be honest. It's been a
It's
long
an
time.
older one, so you were
Yeah,
probably a kid when it came out. So
yeah.
you were definitely a
Might have
kid when
actually.
it came out.
Well, yeah, a lot of people are face palming for me missing that one right there. Chip, were you confident with that one, or do you think that was maybe gonna slip past?
I thought there was I wanted to do one that I mean I always do ones that I think you can get. I mean except for the one time I gave you like Morgrim. I thought there when I picked Morgrim, I was like he definitely doesn't even know this is a Pokemon. But yeah, I mean I don't know. I thought there was a chance you would get it. This was a playable card too. So I don't know
Yeah.
why that would necessarily have helped you. Yeah, I don't think you've ever sit there and read your flavor texts when you're playing the game, but
No, and the better attack was the Power Blast. So, but I didn't even know that name of that attack, to be honest.
yeah, well, once you see, it's funny too because there's two attacks on this card: Psychic and Power Blast. And whenever you said that you were thinking Elgium or Beheum, I was like debating which of the two attacks I wanted to read. But when you said you thought it was Elgium or Beheum, I was like, oh, I'm definitely giving him Psychic for sure. There's no shot in
The power.
Elgium has Power Blast, right?
Yeah, there's no shot. Yeah, maybe I would have guessed something else. Yeah, if you had said if I had heard the Power Blast, that's true. But yeah, once you said Psychic, I was like, I don't know. Is there an LGM out there with a one Psychic energy, 10 damage Psychic attack? I was like, that could be. But Psychic is usually times the amount of energy. Almost always. I feel like sometimes it is just like
It's
10
usually based
damage.
on the energy, yeah. But
Yeah.
better
Oh well.
luck next week, actually in 2 weeks. Because next week
Yeah.
I'm getting back ahead, baby. This is my time. Just wait. Episode 46, it's happening.
All right, so got some more stuff to talk about as far as Orlando goes. Because I mean, we haven't had, like I said, Crown Zenith doesn't change up too much in the meta. We did just have a regional with Liverpool. Lugia has been the most popular deck. 30%. We don't know the number for Liverpool. The lowest it's got down to is like 29.6%, I think. But besides that, it's been that or higher at every major tournament since Lugia has been a playable deck. We don't know the Liverpool numbers for day one. Those are all the day one numbers. Day two, it's been like close to like 40-45% at most of them. Liverpool's it was 37. But yeah, it's still definitely the deck to beat, right? Or do you think that Lost Box is finally making a move for that seat? Or with Mew winning, Mew did just win Liverpool and has been doing pretty consistently well. Do you think
Right,
it's like
right.
Mew needs its throne back?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is what is the deck to beat? I mean, Lugia will still be the most played deck, I think, right? I don't think that's changing probably for the rest of I mean, I don't know. There is a chance like we come around to like Charlotte regionals or something like that. Is that what is the last regionals in this format? It's Charlotte it might be we have this oh God, we have this set for so long. Yeah, Fort Wayne is even in this format too. So yeah, it might be come time Fort Wayne if Lugia has not done well for a couple tournaments. We could see it drop below that, 25, maybe down to 20%. But for now, yeah, like for Orlando for sure. What are you looking at?
There's how many more tournaments in this
What are
format?
you
One,
looking
two,
at?
three.
Oh, you just like leaned so far forward into the camera.
Oh, all right, hang on. There's let me count real fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus OCIC. 6 more tournaments in
Yeah.
this same form. That is that's disgusting.
That's just
That's
ones you're
so
playing in as
gross.
well because there's Bochum,
Oh yeah, true. I have to
there's
play in 6 more of these. Well, I don't have to. I could not go to them. I probably will go to them. I love competing. So I probably will go. I don't have to, but I enjoy competing more than I hate this format.
there might be some formats where you chose not
So
to.
I'm gonna complain about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started giving up on before COVID. I was giving up on expanded regionals. I didn't go to one of them or 2 of them towards the end there.
Yeah, it was getting pretty bad. But yeah, so about the deck to beat. I mean, Lugia is still going to be the most played. But yeah, you bringing that up is an interesting point. I saw this tweet today from Jake in a reply. He's been, the anti-meta breaker of the whole format, right? His testing, he tweeted this, his testing group right now, they're definitely overcooked a little bit. Kevin
Let 'em cook.
replied and
What the
said,
heck?
we know that Lugia counter 88 is just Palkia with one different card. It's fine. And Jake replied, Lugia's not the BDIF anymore. Beating Lost Box is the real challenge. And so I guess that's the question. Like, is that true? Is Lost Box really the deck to beat? And I feel like it might be because I think if you factor in Lost Box Rayquaza and just like other Lost Box, right? Because there's so many different Lost Box decks. There's Lost Box Ogre, and then people might be trying stuff with the Sky Seal Stone type things with more V attackers. We might see Zamazenta. Like Lost Box decks are going to look very different this weekend than what they've looked like the last few tournaments. You're going to be questioning a lot of what people have in their list, right? There's not really a defined list to really base anything off of here.
Yeah, I
Um,
think this tournament will like set some ideas up, but then like this is like not. Then we have OCIC right after that, which is the
right.
international tournament. So I'm sure everyone else is cooking outside of America as well. But this will like kind of set the pace for some ideas, but then there'll definitely be more to cook with after OCIC. Hopefully, of course, it could just be like 8 Lugias in top 8 in both of these tournaments. Like
You
that wouldn't
know,
be a huge shock.
yeah, I think that we are getting to a point though where it does feel like lost people are worrying more so. It's almost feels more so like people know what they can do to beat Lugia, right? It's like, okay, if
Yeah,
the meta looks like Lugia isn't going to be playing their bird keepers and stuff, we can play some paralysis type things, right? Or like there's ways that you can beat Lugia there. Or if um you know Arceus Duraludon seems like it's well positioned. If Lugias aren't playing their canceling colognes, then Arceus Duraludon has a pretty decent matchup into Lugia, right?
yeah.
But when it comes to things like Mew, people are like, okay, we've got Drapion in order to beat Mew. When it comes to Lost Box, it's not quite as defined as to what you need to beat Lost Box. We've seen things like Flying Pikachu popping up. We've seen things like Ice Cube popping up in decks, of course. Those have all been kind of popular as strategies, but the thing is Lost Box also can deal with all of those things, right? You can play Escape Rope. You could even play Echoing Horn that people have played in Lost Box decks. So these are all things people have considered. Um, when you're debating, building a deck to beat Lost Box, you have to consider what cards are you trying to beat in Lost Box, right? If you're going into a vanilla list that doesn't have any ways to get around Ice Cube or Flying Pikachu, then yeah, those seem like two good options. But if they can get around those cards, if they've got like Temple of Sinnoh for Wash Energy, that's cards people have played before, then it's just how many cards are you willing to commit to your 60 card deck to answer a certain matchup. And with Lost Box, it's just hard because there's so many possible ways for them to play the deck.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I don't know. I feel like a lot of the answers they'll kind of beat most of the builds. And I guess it would just be like to try and keep whatever build of whatever deck you choose to play. Probably you don't want it to be unfavorable against the most popular build of Lost Box. So if like Kyogre was the most popular build, then playing Mew's probably not the best idea. But like the rest of them don't handle Mew that well, so then Mew's still pretty good. And I think that's why like Mew's still been pretty good for that reason as well. Because like Rayquaza has been the most popular build, which I think Mew actually has a fine time against. At first I thought it was a pretty bad matchup, so I would say probably you don't want to lose to the most popular build of Lost Box, but I guess we are kind of up in the air as to what that is right now, right?
Yeah.
Um, but there's so many different builds, and a lot of the stuff you can play kind of collaterals most of the other builds of Lost Box to some extent, if not all the way. So, like, I mean, like we just saw with Sander, like the Flying Pikachu plus Parasol pretty much probably beat almost every single Lost Box list that showed up to Liverpool if he was able to set it up, right? Like, I'm pretty sure
Right.
he just beat most of them, if not all of them. So, yeah, I mean, most of the time you can collateral most of them, kind of sweep both of them up. But the deck is so versatile, it is kind of hard to beat, right? Like you can't. It is so versatile. Like you definitely are. You don't have that. There's not that many good answers for it. There's just some stuff that's good sometimes. And if the Lost Box player wants to beat your tech, they usually can, right? You usually don't have the kind of final like in the back and forth of teching for each other. Lost Box can, I think, always win that trade off.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and at that point as well, it just is like metagame prediction of like what answers are going to be played, what answers do I want to play to those answers, right? So it becomes super. You can easily get too many layers deep, and that's why
Yeah,
metagaming
yeah,
is such an important skill in the game. Because sometimes as well, like if you're like if we're talking about like at the top level, right? Sometimes players will play one or two cards for a specific group of players because they know they want to win the tournament and they think the deck is strong enough that they can beat most of the other field. They think they know what this group is going to play, so they'll play a card to beat that group, right? Like that definitely
yeah.
happens.
I feel like it used to happen a lot. I think tournaments are just way too big to do that anymore. I feel like that was definitely a thing pre COVID, but since COVID, I feel like the tournaments are just there's way too massive to like ever think about that kind of stuff
Yeah,
anymore.
maybe
It's just
so.
so, which is a good thing. They're so big. That's a good thing. Like they're super big for a reason. I mean, maybe if like uh a top group like consistently was doing well at a tournament and they just kept bringing the same deck over and over, it would be stupid not to tech for them at a certain point, right? Like if they win like
Yeah,
back to
like if
back
a
regionals
same
with,
group played like Lost Box Kyogre for like 4 regionals in a row, right?
I mean, we're not winning though. We're not winning the regionals, so but yeah. If we were winning every regional with Lost Box Carrier, that'd be one thing. But we're not getting the dubs yet, so yeah. Then you should probably, maybe it'd be good to like put a tech card in for Lost Box Kyogre. Like maybe the Manaphy and the Mew wasn't as bad as Xander thought if Lost Box Kyogre was winning every single tournament. But yeah, the tournaments are just so huge right now. Yeah, it's hard to like specifically even want to tech for some fringe decks, let alone like groups of good players or anything like that. It's just like, yeah, there's massive, which is a good thing. Which is a good thing. And being bigger is better, for sure.
So will we see, I guess there's 2 cards here we can just talk about. Will we see Sky Seal Stone in Lost Box? And also, should Zamazenta work its way into most builds? So, like, the 2 main builds it feels like right now are Rayquaza and Kyogre. And that's probably what most people will be playing, is one of those 2. And there is a chance we'll see some new builds emerge, right? Something that's more
Yeah,
focused on Vs with Sky Seal Stone, with more Raihans, maybe to find them, something like that. Like, there's definitely a possibility for that. But going into this event, it feels like Rayquaza, Kyogre, 2 most popular builds. Should both of them be playing Sky Seal Stone and Zamazenta? Or, maybe one of them likes one card, one of them doesn't like the other card? I don't know. What have your thoughts been kind of on where those 2 fit into the Lost Box builds that exist currently?
I mean, Samus is pretty cool. Hits pretty hard, which is nice. Sky Seal Stone is a little bit more. It's not like I don't know. You kind of have to build. It feels like you have to build both decks around, like including those cards is tough.
Yeah.
Because none of the current builds of Lost Box before Crown Zenith naturally played a ton of basic metals. Like even the Rayquaza Raikou build only played 2 basic metal, and you don't really, when the attack takes 2 basic metal, you don't really want to play only 2 basic metals.
Right.
So you have to like switch over to like a 3 to 4 basic metal build to include Zamazenta, which is a very good attacker, but that's quite a big commitment. And then for the so that's for the Zamazenta, and then for the Sky Seal Stone, you have to be playing V Pokemon or start adding V Pokemon, right? And it felt like towards the end before Ground Zenith, most Lost Zone decks were going down to like no V Pokemon. I think the one person who stood out with a separate list was like Nick Moffat's build of Lost Ray with the Raikou and the Zapdos. But besides that, most people weren't playing it at all. So now you kind of have to like completely restructure these Lost Zone decks, or are the way it was played before Crown Zenith just better? Is the Kyogre build with the? I mean, you did have the Dragonite in the Kyogre build before, so maybe you fit a Sky Seal Stone in there. Or is it like Pablo's build of Ray? Is that just the best build of Ray? That's definitely seen the bend like the Lost Zone deck that I think we've seen the most people kind of pick up and kind of carry on since Pablo played it at San Diego Regionals. Was a ton of I've been seeing a ton of people play it online. People playing it in like their team challenges and stuff or online tournaments, and then in Liverpool too. There was a lot of lists that were very similar to what Pablo brought to San Diego, and I think that was a very good list. And is it so good that you don't really want to add Zamazenta or Sky Seal Stone? I think that's definitely possible for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Zamazenta being so energy hungry is annoying because Zamazenta, in theory, fixes one of the main issues for Lost Box, and that's Stoutland V, right? Because it can just instantly respond to Stoutland. A quick Stoutland from Lugia can be really scary to deal with because, like, for Kyogre, at least traditionally, now you're like panic mode, having to find Snorlax, Mirage Gate, Choice Belt, which you can do. It's not super hard to do, but Zamazenta,
I mean, it's
just
a
finding
cleaner
that
answer.
plus metal energy, is that easier than finding all those pieces is the question. But like for Kyogre, right, that's a deck that wasn't even playing metal energy before this. So now you have to
Yeah.
change the way the entire deck looks if you want to include the Zamazenta into your deck. So yeah, it just becomes a question of is that worth it? And um, I think the answer is potentially, but you just have to change the whole deck. Yeah, I mean, it's just like you're talking about a deck that's gonna be 6, 7 cards different than what you were playing before the card came out, right?
Yeah, so a decent amount of changes, I think, to try to include some of these cards. But it doesn't mean that's not the better way to go. It just means like they're almost like completely different decks at that point, to be honest, which is fine. But are they actually better than what we currently are rocking? I'm not sure yet, to be honest. I haven't messed around too much with the Lost Zone stuff on stream yet, but I plan to do some more of that this week. So if you want to catch me playing, messing around with some of that, be sure to check out the stream this week if you want to see me messing around with some Lost Box stuff, because that's kind of my plan this week going into Orlando for sure. But yeah, I mean, Lost Box in general is good no matter what. I think that's for sure, right? Lost Box is still solid. And if you combine all the percentages together, it'll be, if you because like they've been splitting them up on the meta breakdowns at the regionals. They've been like separating Ray and everything else, but it'll definitely be in the top three most played decks. It'll be Lugia number one, and maybe Lost Box can fight for the number two spot over Mew, but I think Mew will probably still be holding that.
Yeah, so we saw in San Diego, it was Lost Box being more popular than Mew. So going into San Diego, Mew was definitely on a pretty big decline as far as play goes. It was not super popular. I mean, it was reasonably popular at all of these tournaments, right? It was the second most played
Yeah,
deck
yeah.
in Brazil. It was the second most played deck in Toronto, second most played deck in Arlington. But really, at Arlington is where it felt like, okay, none of the top level players are playing this deck, and everyone is playing Drapion. At Arlington
Yeah.
specifically,
There was so
everyone
much Drapion.
everyone had Drapion at Arlington. And so even if you can beat Drapion, especially if you can just beat, one Drapion, right? Like, you don't want to play against it every single round because
Yeah.
it's just going to be tough, a tough tournament road for you. So it was not as played in San Diego. It was the third most played deck, second being the Lost Zone Ray. But Nathan Ginsburg still ended up getting second place with the deck, proving it's still very strong. And then in Liverpool, Leon Kesselring, just got the win. So do we feel like we'll see Mew tick back up into that second place slot? Or will we see people respect it again, adding in those Drapions? I don't know. Is Drapion plus Sky Seal Stone scary enough to keep anyone off of Mew this weekend?
I don't think so. I think Mew will definitely see. I guess if with the Lost Zone decks combined in percentage, they'll probably be ahead of Mew at second place, and then Ray will probably, or not Ray, but Mew will probably be third. And I think, I don't think there's gonna be a huge spike in Drapion. I don't think there has to be. I think a lot of decks naturally can beat Mew. Not like our favorite against Mew, but they have a matchup. They got a game plan. So I don't think we'll see like a huge spike in Drapion just because Mew won and it's been doing well. I do think we'll see a bigger spike in Mew. I think some people who gave up on Mew prior will relook at it now that we've seen it take the
They're
second
gonna
and now
hear it
first
calling
place.
to them once again.
Yeah, at the last few regionals, I do think Mew is pretty good right now. Actually, my one gripe with Mew as of late was like I didn't think it really beat any Lost Box build. But I think current builds of Ray, you do beat. Now we got the Sky Seal Stone stuff mixing in there, and we could see people start to add Drapion to Ray, for sure. Which is something I've been recommending to people. Is actually you play Drapion and Ray. I know it might not seem great because Ray can one hit KO Mew Max twice, but once they get to that Roxanne turn, stuff can really start to get hard to piece together your last couple prize cards as Lost Box Ray. So, yeah, I mean, I think it actually leaves Mew in a pretty good spot. Cause yeah, I was always playing Kyogre and I was always beating up on Mews, so I always felt like the matchup was really good,
Mm-hmm.
or definitely solidly favored. I've lost it a couple times, but yeah, I always felt solidly favored. So I kind of like felt like every Lost Box deck, and like Sablezard always had a really good time against Mew with the Drapion in there.
Yep.
I never really thought about how Ray did. I don't think Ray has the best time against it. So, but yeah, Mew crease in play, still pretty solid. And yeah, I don't think there's gonna be too much Drapion. I don't think it's gonna be too scared of Drapion going into the tournament.
Yeah, I think we'll see it have an uptick in play, and I think we will see it do pretty decently at this tournament. That's my prediction. Because Mew, I think on paper, like, it's not worse than 50-50 against Lugia, I don't think. I think it's right around 50-50, if not sometimes favored if you're playing the
Yeah.
heavy judge and the path builds, right? Which seems to
One
be
thing
the
I
way
will
people are at it.
yeah, one thing I'll mention is Leon's and Nathan's list were one card different as well. So if you don't know where to start with Mew either, you could probably just start with I think I like Nathan's build slightly better because there's only one card different because I like the 3 judge over the 2 judge and a Marnie, which is the only different in Leon's list over Nathan's list. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you want to play Mew and you're looking for somewhere to start, I mean, it's pretty much proven at this point that list is pretty good. So start there.
So another question here: pro cons of Arc Dural and Gudra, right? Which one of those two, if you're debating, if you want to play a tank and heal deck, right? A deck that's going to be hard for your opponent to deal with, you want to set up a big wall, either with the Gudra taking the reduced damage or Duraludon with a ton of HP and the Skyscraper ability, making it so it can't be hurt by Pokemon with special energies on them. Which way are you looking? Obviously, Gudra is kind of the hype deck right now. It just had 2 top 8 finishes in Liverpool. Duraludon, maybe in a little bit of a precarious spot with the Lugias playing Canceling Cologne.
Yeah, possibly. I guess that's like a big deal for Arctur. Yeah, they got the canceling clone. I think the more important part is they don't just have canceling clone, but they're adding Skyla and Irida to their builds, which allows them to find the canceling clone or the choice belt to combo with it. So Lugia can now one hit KO the Duraludon. Whereas before, the only way to get a one hit KO, unless you played Paths of the Peak, which not many people did, the standard way to only get a one hit KO was through the Evital, right?
Yeah.
But even then, the addition of this Irida and Skyla technology into the Lugia deck does allow the Lugia players now to more easily find their vacuums, which gets rid of the Parasol, which makes it more easy to get a one hit KO with the Evital. So all those factors alone, with being the most popular deck, I definitely don't think I'm a huge fan of Arctura. Also, the possibility of Sky Sealstone flipping a lot of the Lost Box matchups to putting that in their favor, which is possible, I think, in the current uh in the way the matchup currently breaks down. Because like if you just KO the Arceus and then KO one Duraludon with Sky Sealstone, you draw. That's all your prize cards. You don't have to go through a second Duraludon anymore, which is a pretty big deal. So it's definitely possible there. And I think Guja, on the flip side of that, I don't think Guja has like any of the problems that Duraludon is gaining. Like Sealstone could be a slight problem for Guja, but definitely doesn't impact the matchup as much as it impacts Arceus Duraludon. And stuff like the canceling Cologne and vacuums and stuff don't affect Guja quite as much. We even saw Stefan not even playing big parasols in their Guja build when they got second at Liverpool Regionals. Like they didn't even have big parasols in the build, right? So I mean, they weren't even scared of Yveltal to begin with. Like they're like, all right, you can Yveltal. I mean, still Temple of Sinnohs, right? So if you put your Temple of Sinnohs on the right turns, it's
Yeah.
gonna be hard for them to use Yveltal anyways. But if the one Yveltal happens, it doesn't mean your game's completely ruined. You can still like get a dub from there. So yeah, I think Guja is definitely the superior tank heal deck right now for sure.
Yeah, I think Gudra's a little better because, if you're looking just at the two decks and how they play generally, right? Arceus Duraludon, no matter what you're playing against, has a very straightforward and simple game plan, right? Turn one, get an Arceus into the active. Hopefully you started it, put an energy on it, and pass. Turn two, Arceus V Star attack, load up a Duraludon VMAX, and then just start swinging, right? Like, there's very little room to make plays with Arceus Duraludon. You're kind of just playing the hand that you're dealt. Whereas with Gudra, you're seeing a lot more of the deck and you're giving yourself a lot more options just naturally with the way the deck plays and the way that the deck is constructed. So I do expect Gudra to be not only more popular, but also to just do better in the tournament because of the outplay potential that exists that Arceus Duraludon, I mean, really doesn't have. It's still a fine deck, I think. I think Arceus Duraludon is just fine, and I think you could play it and hit the right matchups and have a decent finish at this tournament. But, you're not giving yourself really any room to do anything fancy, whereas with Gudra, you kind of have that ability.
Yeah, definitely a little bit more linear on the Arceus Duraludon side for sure. Um, And moving on to, kind of one of the decks that we just talked about being a problem for Arceus Duraludon, the new technology in Lugia. Do you think that'll keep it ahead of everything else going into this weekend? Should people still be rocking the canceling Cologne and Irida Skyla? I think one of the reasons people played it was I kind of want a way to deal with the Aerodactyl
Right.
that people are running. Of course, the Aerodactyl does shut off the possibility for Luminian to find Irida or Skyla, but you can always just use Luminian before the Aerodactyl to put the Irida Skyla in your hand and then have it for the next turn for when your opponent uses Aerodactyl to use that to find the canceling cologne. But even just having canceling cologne in general gives you an out to that matchup. I think that was one of the main reasons people want to include the canceling cologne. They don't want to get cheesed by the Aerodactyl. Also good against Wheezing. But the added effect is that it really does. I think it hits Arceus Duraludon harder than either of those decks.
Yeah.
And do you think that'll be something that people continue to play, like moving into this next major tournament?
Yeah, I think that it makes sense, and I do like the inclusion of the either Skyla or Irida, and I think that's really kind of the big question is which one is gonna be better. So yeah, the Cologne hits so many potential things for you. I still think Vikavolt Aerodactyl is pretty solid. Obviously, it just won the last American regionals, so I don't. That's not the type of deck that's ever going to be super heavily played.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a shot that a few like solid players pick it up and it can do pretty well with it. So I think it's maybe worth having that answer. And yeah, I guess if Duraludon goes down in play, like the value decreases there a little bit. But
Yeah, definitely.
I think Skyla and Irida are just surprisingly like pretty decent in Lugia. I still think I'm personally a little bit of a fan of the Irida over the Skyla, and that being alongside if you're playing 2 Luminion. I think if you're playing double Luminion, Irida's better. Maybe if you're only playing 1 Irida, you go, or sorry, 1 Luminion, you go the
Two
Skyla.
Irida.
Yeah, right. If you're only playing 1 Luminion, maybe you go the Skyla route. And I actually pulled up Tord's tweet here because he was the one who's playing Skyla in Liverpool. He said that um, Skyla gives you access to your single copy items and acts like a consistency card early. Skyla greater than Irida, since it also lets you grab boss for the following turn. Now, I mean, if you're playing double Luminion, Irida also lets you grab boss for the following turn, right? Through
Yep.
the Luminion. It does, and it also keeps your options open depending on what your opponent does, right? Because now you can maybe use that Luminion to get you something else. But I mean, I don't know. I've been a fan of the double Luminion in Lugia. I don't know how you feel about it, so that is maybe why I'm leaning more towards Irida. But what are your thoughts, Skylar versus Irida?
Yeah, double Luminion has felt pretty good in there as well, or for sure. Um, I do think because I do have been liking I do like the double Luminion, so I kind of do like the Irida for that reason as well. But if you are rocking one, I guess I get the Skyline maybe makes a little bit more sense. There's gonna be less targets for the Irida to even get you anyways to begin with,
Yeah,
so you may as well have the flexibility to like grab a follow up supporter.
yeah, for sure. So, are you a fan of the Cologne as well in Lugia this weekend?
I think I would just. I feel like the deck has almost evolved to the point where it has answers for almost literally everything we've seen. Like towards list specifically, there's no Bird Keeper in here anymore, so Tord probably wouldn't have been happy to run into any kind of Articuno deck. But when was the last time anyone saw one of those? Anyways, most of the other Lugia players have been keeping the Bird Keeper around, so it does kind of make sense that no one's really gonna be playing any type of deck like that. But maybe this is the time for those decks to make a resurgence. To be honest, right? Um, so yeah, I think I would. Yeah, it almost feels like that combo: the canceling cologne, one vacuum, one choice belt, plus the Irida, the Skyla. That covers such a wide variety of matchups that you want those options in. That, and I don't. And I think if you cut any of those, like if you cut down to zero vacuum, zero canceling cologne, or zero choice belt, which we have seen, I think I wouldn't play the Skyla or the Irida. But as long as you're rocking the item package, playing the one way to guaranteed find those through the Luminion makes a lot of sense. And like another reason to kind of play double Luminion, I think, would also be well, if you use one of your Luminions, but it's super important to find these item cards. Having the second Luminion to find your Skyla or your Irida to find the item card
Yeah.
also makes a decent amount of sense to include that second Luminion as well. So it kind of combos really well with the whole Irida thing to begin with, to be honest. So yeah, I mean, I think they're good.
Yeah.
Gives you a really good matchup spread. Like you don't lose like anything.
Yeah, I mean that's why it's the best deck, right?
Yep,
It gives you so many
that's true.
options. You can build it so many different ways, and that really, I guess, becomes a question: do you like that going into this weekend of what Tor did, not playing Bird Keeper? Like, is it okay to take the L if you play against the Articuno cheese that we saw be so popular in Toronto?
I don't know. The more that people cut it, the more likely it is to
Right.
rise back up. And
It
I actually
becomes
was
that
looking
game of
at
chicken almost, right?
yeah, looking at the other list, it looks like Raz chose to cut the Bird Keeper as well, but Kim did play it. Those are the two players who got top 8. And right at ninth place, Ethan also chose to not play the Bird Keeper. So it looks like quite a few people are cutting the Bird Keepers from their builds. And actually, to kind of talk about that, even at the height of Bird Keeper, where we saw it in most, or if not every Lugia deck, we still saw people doing decently well with Palkia Articuno. So the deck still can function pretty well into a field that is pretty like where the field is like kind of teched out for it. So now that some people are cutting the Bird Keepers, I don't know. That does kind of beg the question: is it time for the paralysis stuff to make a resurgence for sure?
Yeah, we could see that pop back up. A deck that we did not see any of in top 8 of Europe, and really only one in the top 32, is Reggie's. Now, Reggie's is a deck that always seems to do really well at the American regionals. I think there's been one in top 8 of like every American regionals this season, almost, it feels like.
A lot of them,
Yeah,
most.
definitely most, if not all of them. We can
There wasn't
fact
one in
check that.
Toronto, I
Wasn't one
don't
in
think.
Toronto? Okay.
Yeah, but maybe everyone before that.
Yeah, it was definitely on the decline as far as hype in Toronto. I remember everyone thought it wasn't any good because it couldn't beat Lugia, right?
Yeah.
Um,
There was none in Peoria as well, but that was a big surprise that there was 0 Reggie in top 8 of Peoria, to be honest. That was like there were so many people playing it and it was doing so well to begin with, but yeah, Reggie's
and Kid bubbled
showing
at
up for the
ninth with
most
it,
part.
right, as well.
Yeah. Reggie showing up for the most part at most American regionals. But we don't see it quite the same over in Europe, that's for sure, which is interesting. I feel like there is sometimes a little bit of, and there wasn't no Reggies in day two, but the only Reggie player in top 16, there was some Reggies in day two, but the only Reggie player in top 32 at 16th place was Rahul, an American player who went over
Right.
to Liverpool regionals and placed the best with the Reggie. So um, it definitely is interesting. I think there is sometimes like little things like that, region to region, where some regions play decks a little bit more, some a little bit less, and it does kind of seem like Reggie's is currently a difference between America and Europe. It's hard to compare the other regions in those kind of talks as well because there's just so many less events over in Australia and Latin America right now. But like, yeah, between Europe and America, that's like the big difference right now. Reggie versus no Reggie.
So with it not being super played in Liverpool, and with Gudra doing pretty well at Liverpool, obviously getting second place, another one in top 8, and being a pretty heavily talked about deck going into the tournament. I mean, Gudra's not a good matchup for Reggie. It's pretty much
That's pretty
unwinnable.
bad.
And there's not really anything you can add to fix the matchup, right? So, with that being considered, do those things scare you off of recommending Reggies to people this weekend?
I don't think so. The term's gonna be just so massive, and like Guja's gonna be what, like 3 to 4% of the meta. Maybe it gets up to 5, right? Like that's not a big percent of the meta. And I wouldn't say it's gonna have like a very good success rate or anything like that. So its day one to day two conversion won't be super high, like higher than anything else probably. So I wouldn't say it should scare you off of playing Reggie. If you were set on playing Reggie's before Liverpool happened, I think you should still be set on playing Reggie's going into this one. There's no real tech in it either. You can do like Lost Vacuum to get rid of Parasol, so that way Reggie's can attack Gudra. But I think that's a little bit of cope because they have so many switch cards. Do they really care? Most of the time, no. They'll be able to switch around it, switch out of it. And they only need to get so far ahead anyways to begin with before they're just like super far ahead and you can't do anything to come back anyways. So I don't think I definitely wouldn't tech for the matchup. If you're playing Reggie's, definitely don't tech for Gudra. That's just a waste of time. But I also think it would be like a fine play overall too. Yeah, it's one matchup, and it's going to be more of a fringe matchup to begin with. So I don't think
Yeah.
anything else is kind of shifting around. Whereas like a whole ton of Reggie hate besides, and Guja's not even there to hate on Reggie. It just kind of naturally beats it, right? A lot of people were like, Reggie's are too good. Got to play the Guja. It was just like, hey, Guja's kind of cool right now. Let's play it. It also beats Reggie's, right?
Yeah, so I think Gudra will still be pretty popular. I mean, also just like it's the cheapest Pokemon deck. Like it's gotta like you, if you wanted to build Reggies from scratch right now, it would have to cost you like $35 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's so cheap, so easy to pick up. And so I think that's gonna be a good route for players to go if you're someone who, because like I mentioned earlier, like Florida's got a massive Pokemon community. Maybe people who haven't played in regionals since the last Florida regionals back in Daytona in 2019. Um, if that's the case, maybe we'll see people picking up kind of the cheapest good deck and just rolling with it.
Yeah, yeah. And when a deck is this good and this cheap, like the value's there,
The
right? Like
value is insane for
come
sure.
on, Reggie.
Yeah, absolutely. $100 investment to the regional, $70 to play in the tournament, and then $30 for your deck to play in the tournament.
Yeah, and the deck's pretty good. So like, you can't complain on that one for sure.
All right, and then one more deck. I think. Oh no, we got a couple more decks to talk about. Sorry, it's just the end of the page. So how should players feel about picking up Control going into this weekend? Something definitely worth talking about, as Sander, of course, did just get top 8 in Liverpool with a unique Control build compared to what we have seen in the past. We talked about it on the podcast last week. Azul, I don't know. What do you think about the Flying Pikachu Regieleki? Is this the way to play Control Mewtwo v Union? I don't know. What do we think? Control, how does it feel for this tournament?
Well, Mewtwo v Union, I definitely wouldn't play. I think it's way too risky, especially with canceling Cologne all of a sudden in Lugia decks.
Yeah, that's true.
And so now they can just Yveltal your Mewtwo v Union. And then it has those like the troubles against Lost Ray and stuff as well. So definitely don't play Mewtwo v Union Control. But Sanders' new concoction, I think, is pretty good. And yeah, I mean, if you want to put the time in to learn the matchups, there's a little bit of nuance to all the matchups. With the new Flying Pikachu VMAX technology, can't beat them, so we had to join them. I don't see a reason to not play Control if you're a Control fan. Like I think Sanders done most of the work for anyone who wants to pick up Control. You just gotta pick up the list and run some games with it. And Sander even put out a Twit longer was it today, yesterday?
I think today,
Kind
yeah.
of going over some of the choices, why Flying Pikachu over SQ, stuff like that. So if you want a little bit more in-depth analysis on it, go check out. I guess the biggest one would be Radiant Gardevoir versus Radiant Greninja. So go check out Sander's Twitter at Sander Wojcik, Wojcik. Yeah, go check out their Twitter. Read the tweet longer if you wanted some more in depth on it. And I believe they also did Sander usually does like post tournament Twitter thread where they answer some questions that people ask questions about when they post their deck list on Twitter. So they usually post their deck list on Twitter in a picture, and people ask some questions. They also have some more information there. So if you're looking for a little bit more in depth analysis of what Sander was rocking, why they were rocking it, and yeah, I think it's just. I mean, it's a good deck. It's a good deck, right? Like I don't think anyone's going to be too concerned. How could you be concerned? Like it would feel really like it feels really weird to like be concerned with teching for control when it's like a 1,500 person tournament. But I don't know, like you naturally teching for like ice cues and stuff could also lead you to being able to beat stuff like the flying Pikachu, so that'd be
Sure.
fine as well, I guess. But yeah, it's just such a huge tournament. I don't think that all of a sudden like people see Sander make another top eight, and control is going to be like super teched for. So it's still like I think like a really solid choice if you want to put the time into learning how it works, or if you just want to pick it up the night before and try and cheese your way through some games with a
Yeah.
control deck. That's always fun too.
Make sure
A
you at
lot of
least
people,
know how the deck works, though, right?
yeah, I mean, a lot of people struggle with like coming up with ways to beat stuff like control. That's why control is like such a powerful deck to begin with, is because when you go up against players who are not as experienced at coming up with strategies in the Pokemon TCG, you start doing your thing reasonably well as a control deck, and your opponent just completely like falls apart, and they have no idea what's going on. They're playing this wrong, they're playing that wrong, they're misplaying here, misplaying there, and you can get some really easy wins with control decks like this. So, yeah, control's cool.
Yeah, I think we might see some control this weekend, but like you mentioned, there's just so many players in the tournament. Because that would be the other question, right? Is like, is it worth teching for control? And really, like, I guess just playing a deck that can beat Flying Pikachu, right, would be the main thing.
Yeah.
If you wanted to tech for it, but um, I don't know. Like it's 1,500 players going to be a small percentage of the room, regardless of this finish. I guess the one question I would think about is from Crown Zenith, there is one card that could technically work in this deck. We've seen Sander has obviously Starly here with the Keen Eye to search your deck for 2 cards, and in Crown Zenith there is the Calyrex, which I think this is probably the first time that many TCG players have seen Calyrex's legs. This is a weird
Oh, it's
looking
that
Pokemon.
card.
Yeah, it's this
Oh,
card. Yeah. It also lets you search your deck for 2 cards, so it does the same thing as Starly. It's also for 2 colorless energy, but it does 30 damage and it has more HP. Now the upside to Starly is that it has the ability that lets you use it for free if you Bird Keeper into it, and that alone is probably enough to make Starly better than Calyrex. Just the free attack, letting you put your energy elsewhere, like a Speed Lightning onto a Regieleki, for instance,
also
right?
the extra retreat cost when the capture energy are in the list. Like you can't
Mm.
turn one capture, go get Snorlax and retreat to
I
Snorlax.
hadn't considered the retreat cost just yet, but yeah, I mean, I think that Starly is probably still better, but something that does exist in the new set that is technically a control consideration, right?
Yeah, yeah, and those legs. I mean,
Those legs, they've been there all along. You've just never noticed it. Go look at Shadow
yeah,
Rider Calyrex.
yeah. For some reason, when you said Calyrex, I was picturing Shadow Rider in my head. I was like, okay, Shadow Rider card. I haven't
Look,
seen this one yet in the new set.
the legs, they're
Oh, you
there.
can see them a little bit. They were there the whole time.
They were there. Yeah, because
It's such a
Calyrex is
funny
like,
looking card.
so Calyrex is the Pokemon, and then the horse is actually a different Pokemon, Spectrier. But then they combine together to become Shadow Rider Calyrex, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the lore there from Pokemon.
Is there only like is it like is Calyrex, is it one of those Pokemon that is like just one of in the world, or is it like there's
A
multiple
mythical
Calyrex?
Pokemon? I don't think it's a
Yeah.
mythical Pokemon. I think it's just a legendary. I actually don't know. Worth maybe
Mm.
looking at, but yeah, I don't know. That's it's kind of funny for TCG. I've heard Joe Brown, one of the VGC commentators, complain before about how the trading card game gets to play with all the cool Pokemon, where the video game like they don't get to use Pokemon like Mew and Genesect and stuff like that because they're mythicals. But Mew
Yeah.
Genesect is one of our best decks, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just funny, how it works out. I wonder if it almost makes you wonder if it's like intentional. Are they spreading it out between the games where if you want to play with these mythical Pokemon that you can't use in the video game competitions, you got to go play some TCG.
Maybe they're trying to, yeah, get all the video game players over here. Um, yeah, I think that covers most. The only other thing to talk about, I think, would be, um, I mean, there's we've seen decks be good in the past that people are still kind of clinging on to a little bit. I mentioned Palkia earlier, and then we've seen Arceus as well. I think is the other one to kind of mention here, and we've seen it pop up, do decently. Let's actually check at Liverpool. And I don't count Arceus Duraludon. I say this all the time. I don't count Arceus Duraludon as an Arceus deck. It's just the best way to play Duraludon. But it looks like the highest placing Arceus Flying Pikachu Aerodactyl like box type deck got 31st in Liverpool. So it's still clinging on. We saw Makani get top 8 at San Diego, or top 4, top 8 at 5th place. So it's still hanging about. But I just can't come up with a reason, because the deck doesn't have that good of matchups against everything. I can't come up with a reason to actually play Arceus. The Palkia, I mean, if people are cutting bird keepers from Lugia, I'm kind of looking at that Palkia deck a little bit more, but I can't come up with a reason to play an Arceus deck right now. And even including now Arceus Duraludon, I feel like Arceus Duraludon is kind of making his way out every time. Like I feel like every week, the last couple weeks, I've been like, Arceus Duraludon's looking a little bit better. It's looking a little bit better. Oh, they're playing Cologne and Skyla and their Lugia decks now. Okay, it's looking a little bit worse. So we probably shouldn't play that anymore. But what do you think about Palkia and more traditional Arceus decks?
Yeah, I think the Palkia is pretty interesting actually because you theoretically could play something for all of the top matchups, right? Like you play Articuno for Lugia. You're talking about Mew. Um, honestly,
Drapion?
like Palkia could play Drapion and Sky Sealstone, right? Because you can
That,
you can
I don't think it's gone
Palkia.
that far.
I mean, it's one card, right? You're probably already playing Drapion anyway, right? So you just Palkia KO a Genesect and then Sky Sealstone Drapion a Genesect. You've got Inteleon to find all the pieces like insanely easily. Maybe there's something
That's
there. I don't
true.
know. Palkia could be decent. I've said for like the past week or so that I actually think like an Arceus deck with Radiant Eternatus could be interesting, and I think that might be the best way to play Radiant Eternatus. We haven't seen many people experimenting with that just yet. It feels like most of the ways people are playing Radiant Eternatus is alongside like a Lost Boxy deck, but imagine like Makani Trans deck from San Diego, but you take out all the basic Vs that, kind of make things a little clunkier for you, and you just play 4 Arceus. You still need Aerodactyl and the V Star in there, and then you can just go get your Radiant Eternatus out and get those V Maxes in play for the specific matchup that you want, right?
Yeah, I've heard a couple of people mention some kind of builds like that. I haven't tried out anything myself. But the VMAXs like aren't that high of a priority. If you look at Makani's build specifically, like either setting up a 1/1 Espeon in most games or like a 1/1 Flying Pikachu, you're not too committed to like getting both of them out aggressively. You've got some time. Maybe you want one of them out turn 2. But maybe that opens up the room. Maybe that opens up some room though with a build like that to include more different VMAXs, right? So I could see that, I guess. Like you're just adding more options, and trying to have some power. So trying to have some more power through the Radiant Eternatus with that. So I could see that. I could see that. And it's an Arceus deck, so as long as you get that turn 1 attachment down to the Arceus V, then get your Radiant Eternatus. That might be a little bit much to get consistently with the Arceus deck, but if you can do that, you have Starbirth on turn 2, so you can basically do whatever you want as a follow up in most games. So I could see it. Definitely not sold on it, but it'd be something worth trying out for sure. It'd be cool to see Arceus back, back trying to get towards the top. But what about no? I think that's the two, right? As I said, mentioned Palkia, Arceus, right? Those are the two.
Yeah, and then Vikavolt we kind of already talked about, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's gonna cover all the main decks. We're not talking about Eternatus VMAX because nobody should. And from there, let's do some predictions, Azul, for Orlando Regionals this coming weekend. Over under 2.5 Lugia V Star in top 8. Over or under?
I'm gonna go under.
Under, so 2 or less. I think that under is a good bet, and I'm gonna go with that as well. Crown Zenith card most likely to be in a top 8 deck.
Let's go with. I mean, there's just well, you can pick between like 3, right? There's only like 3 things to. I'm like trying to like think of something else that I could pick out. So it's probably Sky Sealstone. I'm gonna go Sky Sealstone.
Sky Sealstone is the safest bet, but I'm going with one we haven't even
No.
talked about yet, Azul. We haven't even talked about him.
I'm being
Optimal
baited
Bidoof.
here.
Optimal
It knows
Bidoof.
something I don't.
Carefree countenance. in top 8, someone's playing Bibarel. Probably not. It's probably going to be Sky Seal Stone. But to keep it
It's been
interesting,
a
I'm
while.
guessing. I'm guessing Bidoof. I'm guessing Bidoof.
It's been a while since we've seen a B barrel up there. It's about time he's made his comeback. He's
Yeah.
ready to go. He's
Look
just
at
got the optimal Bidoof. Like Raikou ain't sniping your Bidoof anymore. It's time.
and look at how happy this Bidoof is, man. He's just
Yeah,
happy to be a part of the team. Just
he's
sitting there
chomping.
gnawing on his stump, as happy as can be. Highest placing for a Radiant Eternatus deck.
I'm gonna go a little. This seems a little bit hopeful for me, but I want to see someone come up with something cool, spicy. I hope it's not just someone who gets like lucky with a Duraludon build, because Duraludon doesn't seem that good. I can't imagine it being good. So I'm gonna say top 32. Get a Radiant Eternatus in top 32. I think that's like that's pushing it a little bit, maybe. But I want someone. I think someone could come up with something for sure. That's pretty good.
I would love to see Radiant Eternatus in top 32. I'd love to see Radiant Eternatus in top 8, but I'm going to be more realistic than you, Azul. I'm going to say top 64 for sure. Radiant Eternatus.
All right.
That might be generous too. We'll see. I don't know. I'm just honestly heartbroken because I was so excited for that card, man. I was so excited. Someone make a Orbeetle deck. Make it happen. It's just 2 Orbeetles. You do so much, spread so much damage. Come on now.
That's a lot of spread damage. That's for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Will Mew once again be the second most played deck? So I think if we'll just break it down, I don't think it'll beat out all Lost Box variants, but if like we break it down by the most played Lost Box variants, which will probably be Rayquaza, could be Kyogre, probably Rayquaza though. Will Mew overtake that to become the second most played deck once again, like it was previous to San Diego?
I think so. I think it might be close. Like I don't know. Maybe Rayquaza will. I think Mew will probably overtake it. Yeah, I think Mew will be second most played deck. If the lost zone percentages are combined, if you combine all lost zone decks, all lost zone like box decks, not Gudra, not Tina, combine those together, I think they would surpass Mew in being second place. But I think if you split them up, then I think Mew will probably be number 2 in the most played. Not close to Lugia, but maybe around 12 to 15%.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. I think. Well, yeah, I think Mew will likely get back to the second place when you break down the decks. Okay, and finally, Azul, what deck is going to win the tournament? What's winning the event?
I'm gonna go with Lost Box. That's still like Lost Box variants in general are my top picks. I plan to try and win the event, and Lost Box are still in my top picks to play for this event. So I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go with a Lost Box variant of some kind as my pick for the win.
Yeah, Lost Box has not won majors in this format just yet, but it's been such a definitive deck, right? It's been such a staple deck of the format, both Kyogre and Rayquaza. So it feels like Lost Box is maybe due for a win, but I almost have to wonder if this is a weekend where people are respecting it a little too much or trying to find answers a little too much.
I like how we're saying this format, but this is definitely a new format with Crown Zenith. But it's gonna be like the exact same format for a while.
Yeah,
but don't worry.
Yeah.
It has 6 more tournaments to try and get the dub after, or no, this is one of this. It'll have 5 more after Orlando to try and get the dub. So.
To be fair, I was counting it as a Silver Tempest format tournament, but you are correct. Yes,
I mean it basically is.
The first
it feels like it is
the first major of this new format.
I don't think anyone called it the Pokemon Go format, so this is not the Crown Zenith format. It's still Silver Tempest.
I'm going to go with a Mew win. Actually, I think Mew is still very good. Yeah, and we've seen second place. We see a win. I think Mew's got the stuff to make it 2 wins, 2 majors in a row.
Yeesh.
Roll up with your Mew VMAXs this weekend. Bust them out. It's time. Let it ride. Mew country. Let's ride. All right.
Mew's back to try and take the number 1, be the number 1 deck again. Maybe it is this whole time. What if Mew has just been, because like it survived, like whereas Arceus and Palkia have fallen off from being the top dog to now, a pretty like a tier 4 or tier 3 deck. Definitely more of an underling deck. Mew has kind of even when we thought it wasn't as good as it was, it's kind of maintained strong, right? It's still kind of carried on as being a top deck. And I think part of it is kind of like the a lot of people gave up on it, and kind of the general consensus in the community that it's not as good as it was, or it's not good at all, carried on a little bit too hard. I think Mew has probably always kind of been a top dog, and it just kind of was getting unrightfully kind of pushed to the wayside. So yeah, I mean, I would get a Mew winning here would not surprise me at all, because I don't think, like I said, I don't think Drapion's numbers are gonna go that much higher up. Um, Definitely maybe a little bit more than there was, but not to the point where not Arlington levels of Drapion. That was insane how much Drapion was at Arlington.
Yeah. Drapion will be up, but Mew even higher.
We
Come on, baby. Mew for the win. Let's see it. It's happening. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this week, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. Azul, do you have any final thoughts before we kind of close it out?
No, I think that's all I got for this one.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening. If you do enjoy, we'd appreciate your support by just leaving us a simple rate and review on your favorite podcasting platform, or if you're over here on the YouTube channel, dropping us a like, a little comment, interact with the video for the YouTube algorithm. Those small things just take a second or two, but they do help us so much. So we really do always appreciate that, and we read all the YouTube comments as well. So. If you guys want to stay connected with us, the best place to do that is over on Twitter. You can follow myself at Chip Ritchie. Azul is at Azul_GG. And you can follow the podcast at Uncommon_Energy. Thanks as always for the continued support. And good luck to everyone driving down to Orlando this weekend.
Yep. Peace.
See you guys.